Hello, dear listeners. I just wanted to quickly apologize for not having any episode up last week. For those of you who don't follow us on Twitter, we followed our sibling podcast 6 Degrees of Star Wars' lead in abstaining from posting new material in solidarity with the strike for Palestine last week, especially since I felt it was the least I could do since I was unable to abstain from going to work. With all that said, here's your once per episode reminder to keep calling your representatives and demanding a ceasefire, and we hope you enjoy this week's offering.
Holy there's a lot of news.
That's right, Paul Rudd's character in Anchorman 2. This just in. Good Omens Season 3 has officially been announced, leaving the Ineffable Husbands shippers that have been languishing since Season 2 with a light at the end of the tunnel. Along with that, we've discovered that finally someone is doing something with Mickey Mouse's new status as a public domain character for something other than a cheap slasher. And finally, Jordan Peele has officially saved Dev Patel's directorial debut from the potential obscurity of the Netflix algorithm. Monkey Man is inspired by Hanuman's role in the Ramayana and the John Wick movies. Quite the combination. All of this and more coming up on Retelling the News. Welcome to Retelling the News. I am your host, Jasmine Garcia, and joining me today are...
Shamila Karanakaran.
And Conor Duffy.
There's actually quite a lot that we would like to talk about in this segment this week. This is a very last-minute addition to what we were going to be talking about today, but as of this recording, the Good Omens Season 3 has been officially announced. Huzzah! I know the fandom is losing their goddamn minds over this as we speak.
It's nice to see. I mean, we probably weren't shocked or surprised that they were going to be doing a third season, but it's nice to finally get that confirmed, and I'm glad that they're going to be able to finish telling whatever story it is they want to tell with that final season.
Yeah, because in the streaming era, that is just not always guaranteed. I'll be honest, I am a terrible Good Omens fan because it is my favorite book, but I have not actually seen the entirety of even Season 1 yet, let alone Season 2. But I have been spoiled just enough to know that the last episode of Season 2 punched everybody in the gut, basically.
In a good way, though. It was a good punch to the gut, you know?
I'm so glad you say that, because clearly not everybody else thinks that.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand criticisms of the second season, but I also appreciate that there wasn't an attempt to drag out the very clear, deep love that Crowley and Aziraphale have for one another, you know. And in the first season, it is played with, much like it is in the book, you know, and in the second season, without wanting to spoil too much, it is examined with greater depth and is...
The ship is confirmed, basically.
Yeah, it is resolved to a degree, while also maintaining a dramatic parting of the ways to ensure that we get a nice dramatic core there for the final season.
Yeah, and again, from my limited knowledge of how it goes, it feels like a whole bunch of these people have just never watched a rom-com before. like,
I'm surprised because with how Azrael owns a bookstore, he would have read a few rom-coms in his day.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. I'm sure there's somewhere in the back of his mind where he's thinking that. It's like realizing this is an Act 2 breakup. It's gonna be okay. But,
yeah.
And yeah, I will briefly just say, it just feels like a lot of people are doing this thing that I have mentioned before that is really getting on my nerves in terms of media critique, where people are mixing up what they want to see happen versus what's good for the story. And it's like, you know, for example, there are certain movies where, yes, it's very sad that one of my favorite characters died, but I'm not going to pretend that the movie, it doesn't have merit because of it.
Yeah, it's probably kind of similar to the way that a lot of authors and writers, a lot of, you know, creatives, they deal with an issue, I think, that is more prevalent now, where if they create a character who is awful or who has like just horrifying, like terrible views, like, you know, if, say you're writing a story and there's a character in there who has, you know, just horrible views, and you as the author want to examine that, and you make it very clear this person is a bad person who has awful opinions. If you try to present any kind of complexity to a character like that, immediately there's a sense that, I'm not going to say it's a massive thing, but there is an issue where people will question whether or not you share those beliefs. And that can be an issue at its most extreme. I think the whole Crowley-Aziraphale relationship relationship and how it's played with in the show, expanding on how it's examined in the original book, I think that is another perhaps less extreme version of that, where people are angry with, the creators of the show, not just Neil Gaiman. It's, there are other writers and there are other directors who work on the show, and there are the actors as well, who portray those characters and who have an idea themselves of how they want to portray that relationship. I think that it's important to recognize that they are trying to tell a story with a certain degree of complexity and a story that can be a little bit messy, and we have to be comfortable with stories that are kind of messy sometimes. I hope that ramble made sense, or I said something that made sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. It's something I've definitely seen happen in so much media critique and things like that. It's just, trust the creators. The story is not over yet. Like, once the story is over, then you can judge what's happening, as far as I'm concerned. I feel like it's not really fair to judge an incomplete story. And especially because I've heard certain people have accused Neil Gaiman of queer baiting, and I'm just like, what?
Yeah.
No, that is not what any of those words mean.
As a cisgender, white, heterosexual male, take my opinion with several grains of salt, but I wouldn't point to the depiction of Crowley and Aziraphale, or honestly any of the other characters who are LGBT in the show. Like, I wouldn't point to that as queer baiting, There's another kind of like B-plot in the second season. It features two characters that Aziraphale is very interested in getting together, and at the end of that, they both are very clear on, listen, if we're going to have a relationship, that's going to be a decision we make when we're both comfortable doing it, which is the opposite, I think. It's like that's a way more interesting story than, you can't accuse that of queer baiting. That's very clearly two very interesting characters with a certain degree of depth, who are playing with the same kind of like romance tropes that, like you said yourself, like it's like a romantic comedy. Crowley and Aziraphale. Aziraphale is trying to force a romantic comedy with two of his neighbors.
That's a very Aziraphale thing to do.
Yeah, did I just get very meta about what that whole B-plot romance was supposed to express? Was that Neil Gaiman saying, listen, relationships are not as simple as you want them to be?
I wouldn't surprise me. That definitely sounds like more or less what he was intending. And a lot of rom-coms have like the one couple that's kind of a foil to the main one and supposed to teach them kind of a lesson. So that makes perfect sense. I am pretty excited to finally actually watch this show in time for season 3. Like, I've watched a few of the episodes of season 1, and I mean, obviously I know what's going to happen in season 1 for the most part, because again, one of my favorite books of all time. But I am very excited to see how this plays out. Gaiman has yet to let me down, so I don't know, I'm hyped.
I'm not sure where the third season is going to go. My one hope as a fan is that we get an appearance by Frances McDormand on screen as God. If they can just score Frances for a couple of days just to do something in the finale, that would be a lot of fun.
Very Dogma of them. I'd rock with that. Yeah, no, that would be so much fun. You're right. And well, with the end of that part of the segment, we just lost the bulk of the people who might be interested in this. But we still have some pretty interesting news here. So the next thing we want to talk about isn't technically news anymore, I guess, but it is news to us because friend of the show Brian just dropped it in the games chat earlier this week. Finally, a response to Mickey Mouse going into the public domain that isn't a god-awful looking slasher movie, because it seems like every time a new character gets into the public domain, that's especially one that's very kid-friendly, that's what happens, because, edgelord's gonna edgelord. But this game actually looks really charming. It's called The Public Domain, and I'm just gonna read the description here on YouTube. Oh, and it used Rhapsody in Blue in the music. I knew it sounded familiar. Oh, that's nice. After 96 years of copyright-protected status, the world's most famous mouse is being thrown out into the cold. Ejected out into the public domain with the rest of yesteryear's garbage, he must fend for himself and try to find his place in a world where he's no longer the big cheese. The most ambitious asset flip of all time, a new 2D platformer with adventure game elements created by a single rogue nerd. Every single image and sound in the above trailer is taken from the public domain or royalty-free source. And yeah, I did watch the trailer. It looks really charming. Although I will say I'm not sure how I feel about the public domain being portrayed as a dump. What do you guys think?
My theory, or like my suspicion, is that Mickey is going to arrive there and think of it all like, oh, this is where all the forgetful, pointless characters go, and over the course of the game recognize their worth and his own.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah, no, it does seem like they're setting up a character arc, because it does seem like he keeps on saying, yeah, no, I gotta get out of here. There's been a mistake. Because I don't know if my listeners know this, but Disney did a lot of fuck shit regarding copyright in order to hold on to sole rights to Mickey Mouse.
There's even like that opening title sequence where they show the timeline of it.
Yep, that was clever, and I enjoyed that very much.
And the game itself looks like a lot of fun. It looks like a classic 2D platformer, likes of which that I remember enjoying when I was a kid. Like, you know, in the 90s when I got old enough to gain the hand-eye coordination to play platformers for the first time. And it just reminds me of that kind of classic, you know, Super Nintendo, Sega Master System or Genesis style movie tie-in platformer. So I think it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really does. And again, it's just nice to see somebody seem to do something with Mickey Mouse being in the public domain out of a genuine love for the character instead of just, again, trying to get a rise out of people.
Yeah, the most boring thing you could do with Mickey Mouse is turn him into some kind of horrible monster. It's like that movie Blood and Honey when Winnie the Pooh went into the public domain.
They're doing a sequel.
I was thinking about it, and there was one example of someone doing that which I actually thought was great, and it's in The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's in like the second arc when the Martians invade.
I know what you're talking about.
Alan Quatermain and Mina Murray are off to the island of Dr. Moreau. They're trying to find him in order to help stop the Martian invasion. And while on the island, they become intimate in the woods, and in the moment of this intimacy, Mina realizes that someone is watching them, and you turn the page and it's a giant bear dressed to look like Rupert Bear. And I remember when I turned the page the first time that I burst out laughing, like guffawing in my room as I turn the page, and you just see this picture of this grumpy looking white bear in like a red top and a yellow scarf, and it's obviously Rupert Bear. That is the only positive experience I personally have ever had with a character in the public domain who was sweet and nice and is known for being cute and cutesy and stuff, being depicted as some kind of monster. Because especially afterwards, Alan Moore is quite gentle to the character of Rupert Bear, you know, as like an unfortunate experiment of Dr. Moreau on this island, you know. And I think that this public domain game looks like it's going to be way more interesting, if nothing else.
Yeah, because it's not just Mickey, it's like a whole bunch of different public domain movies and stuff that's going to be represented in it. I'm not 100% sure on how, because all I know is that there's like clips in the trailer and such. Like, just bringing it all together. Like, I love a good crossover. This should be really fun. And you are right, like, the instinct to take things that are cute and sweet and make them, like, monstrous. Like, Katie, I remember, like, we had discussed this. I believe she said something along the lines of, like, if it's cute and innocent, it can't be trusted, and what a sad way of looking at things. Something like that.
Yeah.
It's the gamification of it all.
We need to have the ability to take characters that were always seen as like sweet and gentle and a character made for children, and continue to appreciate that is a character children can appreciate, you know. Big old socialist that I am, I definitely don't appreciate Disney's efforts to prevent characters like Mickey going into the public domain, and I certainly don't appreciate Disney's corporate activities, but I can appreciate when a 6-year-old goes to Disney World and they meet Mickey Mouse for the first time in real life, and it's like the greatest thing that's ever happened to them. So taking it, like, if you want to have fun with a character and maybe play around with, like, you know, what's it like for Mickey to be like a more complex character, or if you want to play with like what Mickey was like in the earlier years where he was a lot more of like a trickster and maybe, you know, could sometimes get up into some mischief, then, you know, go right ahead. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm with everyone who just looks at something like oh, we're gonna take Mickey Mouse and make him a slasher horror character, and like that is the cheapest of cheap cash-ins. And
yeah, because like I'm not even against necessarily looking into the dark side of these kinds of characters. I think there's a way to do it that's interesting. Like if you're doing it out of genuine interest in the character and interested in exploring the dark side, like you said, like looking into more complex things. But
doing a slasher thing is just plain shock value.
Exactly. And I'm saying this as someone who is a fan of slasher movies. Like there are some very good ones. Scream is still one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big fan of horror, and And I enjoy a good slasher movie, you know. I've gotten to the point now where, like, it needs to be a bit more interesting than just, like you say, Scream is a really good slasher movie. It, you know, that in just a way it plays with the tropes, but it's not just doing that. It has interesting characters in it, you know. It has an interesting story.
Yeah, and Spyglass should treat their leading ladies better. I had to throw some shade there, I realized. It was my duty. Hayden
That's a whole other
Panettiere
story.
actually called them out for being really unfair to Melissa Barrera, so that's nice.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yep. Extra glad we saved the cheerleader. But anyway, now, admittedly, this was the news story that really made me realize, okay, we gotta talk about this. Jordan Peele has basically made sure that Dev Patel's directorial debut, Monkey Man, gets a theatrical release. This is very cool of him. And, you know, I was just like, you know what, let's see if there's anything we could do with this, because this is really interesting news. And what's funny is, when I saw Monkey Man, I was just like, okay, it's being made by Monkey Paw Productions. Are they doing a monkey's paw thing? Because that'd be hilarious. But then as I was reading the description at first in the article, I was all, okay, is this a Count of Monte Cristo kind of thing? And then it said it was actually based off of the legend of Hanuman, who I mostly only know because of Black Panther.
Glory to Hanuman.
Now, Shami, of course, being the research queen that she is, has been ever so kind to look into this further for us silly white/whitish people.
So basically, this is a retelling of the Ramayana, but from the perspective of Hanuman.
Right, I'm aware of Ramayana. We've discussed it before on the podcast a bit, but...
Yeah.
So this is basically related to the rescue of Sita, basically, but
Yes.
it's directly from Hanuman's point of view. Okay.
Exactly. So basically, Hanuman is this humanoid monkey. Well, anthropomorphic monkey is more like it. So he is the son of a wind god, and he has superpowers. Like, you could probably see him as a precursor to, like, Sun Wukong from Journey to the West.
You had said that there was some parallels between the two figures, right?
Yes, because Hanuman has his trademark gada, or an Indian mace. That's like a parallel to Sun Wukong's golden cudgel. They also like are both trickster archetypes. And also some scholars think that Sun Wukong may have been influenced by Hanuman, because Sun Wukong can be traced back about 1,000 years with Journey to the West, and the Ramayana is even older than that.
Well, that's really cool. But yeah, monkey gods being tricksters, that does make a certain sense if you know anything about monkeys.
Yes.
Alright, but basically it seems that the movie's also explicitly said to be influenced by John Wick as well, and other action movies like that. So basically it's a revenge action thriller from the looks of it. From what you know about Hanuman's part in this story, do you see any parallels when you read the description or look at the trailer? Because the trailer has dropped. It looks amazing.
Oh, definitely the super strength part where he's training, because Hanuman actually has superpowers, but he was cursed to forget them because when he was a kid, he was very mischievous. He liked to play pranks on the big sages, so they cursed him to forget about it. And it was only after, like, the bear god Bavraman reminded him that he remembered. And they have, like, a certain piece of super strength where he flies to the Himalayas to find an herb to cure Lakshmana. He couldn't tell which herb was which, so he picks up the entire mountain and he flies over to Lanka.
God, I love mythology.
So there's a line in one of the original posters. It says, "One small ember can burn down everything." Now that was a big clue for me, because Hanuman basically flies over to Lanka to rescue Sita, but she insists that Rama be the one to rescue her, and Hanuman is captured by Ravana and the Rakshaka army. And basically, instead of being killed, his tail is lit on fire, but then he runs all over Lanka, setting the entire city ablaze.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. And also, yeah, they're very much leaning into the imagery, and even in the very beginning of the trailer, Dev Patel's character is even kind of telling the story.
When I was a boy, my mother used to tell me a story of a demon king and his army. They brought fire and terror to the land. Until they faced the protector of the people, the white monkey.
There you are. You
Yeah.
they're not being shy about the influences at all. So yes, this movie absolutely is now eligible for this podcast, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I will say there is a very cute dog in this trailer, and while I was
Do
watching it,
not kill the dog.
I was like, okay, that dog better end up being okay, but then I remembered they're taking influence from John Wick, and I was just like, no! Listen, that is the whole reason I haven't actually watched any John Wick movies other than what my mother and father watched downstairs. I do not want to deal with a dead dog.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I haven't shown it to Katie yet. Because
Oh no.
I think she would appreciate John Wick as an action movie, but I would need to basically go back and make sure I know the timestamp and just be like, okay, I need you to hold on for a second here and close your eyes while I fast forward about 3 minutes. Okay, for those playing at home, for those playing at home, John Wick's dog is dead, and just carry on from there.
Yeah, to be honest, I think the reason that movie ended up being such a sleeper hit is because every dog owner in America would absolutely flip shit like that.
Well, I remember when I first heard about it, I'm like, Keanu Reeves in an action movie about an ex-hitman who declares revenge on the people who killed his dog. I remember reading that and thinking to myself, that sounds like the dumbest thing in the world. And then a friend of mine, Fergal, we were both living in Toronto at the time, and we both hey, do you want to go see the Keanu Reeves Dead Dog movie? And so we went to the cinema, and we met up, and we went into the cinema, and we sat down, zero expectations. Came out an hour and a half or so later, and we both looked at each other jaws on the floor and went that's the best action movie I've seen in 10 years. And it was, knowing nothing about the mythological sort of foundation of Monkey Man. I'm interested to learn more about that. Coming from sort of the more kind of angle of being a fan of the John Wick movies and being a fan of the impact that those movies have had on action films, on fight sequences. You can see the influence those had on the Netflix Daredevil series and other action movies that have come out since then, which have focused have spent more time focusing on interesting fight sequences, taking a lot of inspiration from modern day East Asian action films as well, now kind of filtered through an American lens and now being presented again. I'm excited to see what Dev Patel is able to do with that, and I'm really happy that Jordan Peele is using the power he has accrued from the success of his own films, working now as a producer on this one, being able to look at the finished product and go, actually this deserves to be seen in theaters. Big props to Jordan Peele for stepping in there and telling the guys with the money, this is what you got to spend some money on this,
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, we've discussed this already in this episode, the streaming era is so precarious, especially with movies that aren't inherently a sure thing, which is such a shame because I really feel we used to see it as a big equalizer for that very thing. Seriously, props to Jordan Peele because this looks incredible, and you could definitely see the John Wick influence, I feel
Meanwhile, I'm trying to figure out which other characters have mythological counterparts to it, because we know that with that Dev Patel is playing Hanuman's counterpart, and the leader of clearly the bad guy, the old guy in the car we're driving past all the homeless people, that is Ravana. That's actually accurate casting because Ravana is technically really old. He actually killed Rama's ancestor.
Okay,
and
so a family matter indeed.
Yeah.
Which makes sense since I know Dev Patel's character is getting revenge for his mother's death, basically, after having been in prison, which was why I was thinking Count of Monte Cristo before I found out what it was really influenced by.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know if that is related to anything in the original sort of legends or stories of Hanuman. If something that Patel added.
I think it might have been what Patel added because there is no mention of death of Hanuman's mom. The extent of her role is pretty much she gets. When she was praying in the temple, she comes across this divine porridge. I am not kidding. It's literally divine porridge. It's literally for the same divine porridge that led to Rama's conception.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
And also, Hanuman is an avatar of not Vishnu, but of Shiva.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Vishnu and Shiva are one of the three main gods. So with Brahma. So in a sense, they are are brothers, but it's interesting to see like what they're gonna do with it.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty hyped. I'm excited to see this, and I'm very picky about my action movies, but this looks amazing. And you know, as we're gonna find out in an episode that's finally gonna drop soon, I am a big fan of Dev Patel.
Dev Patel and his magnificent beard. We never get enough of it.
I always appreciated Dev Patel, but yeah, like something happened after he grew that beard.
Yeah.
I think some guys just look good with a beard, and maybe that combined with his talent already as an actor, for whatever reason, maybe it's like a Samson thing where like he grew a beard and his acting ability just like exploded, and now he's just doing the best work of his career.
That's the reason why growing the beard is a TV trope.
Yeah, and now not only is he the star of this movie, he's the director. This is his directorial debut, and
he's also written the script, so he's a scriptwriter for this.
That is true, yeah. So, yeah, no, this is a passion project from him, and I think it shows. I think it very much shows from what we've seen so far.
It looks really good, like little bits we've seen. If the action like that we've seen in the trailer, like if it stands up to sort of like extended sequences, I think it's going to be really good. And I like the humor in it as well. I love the moment where he has to make his escape, and he's going to do the classic action movie thing where he leaps out through the window, but it's tempered glass, and it's just
he bounces off of it.
You hear this bunk as he bounces off it, like.
I was not expecting that. I gotta say, I was like, oh.
I suspect it's going to be a recurring gag, and then maybe at the last second, like, he throws the villain out the window. That's what I'm predicting is going to happen.
Ooh, that would be awesome.
There is one small nitpicky thing.
Go for it.
That is the reference to Nicki Minaj.
I totally missed that. I know in the song they do specifically name dropped Keanu Reeves, so I was just like, see what you did there. I did not hear the Nicki Minaj bit.
Okay, so when he and his friend are in the garage, the friend character shows like this rickshaw thing, and he said he calls it Nicki Minaj, big trunk, wild headlights. And yes, it's like, I know Nicki herself is actually half Indian, but it's still tasteless in that regard. The sexualization and objectification of black women, I could get onto it, but this is not the episode for that.
You're not wrong, though.
I do hope, because, I mean, obviously you do bring up a good point there, though. Like, a lot of times, these movies, there isn't usually a lot of work for female characters in these movies, if you know what I mean. Like, there usually isn't a lot there. So, I don't know if this is gonna kind of break that trend. Fingers crossed, because we do see a couple of female characters in the trailer, and hopefully they have a bit more to do than just be like a love interest or someone who needs to be rescued. I know, like, avenging the dead mother is kind of a trope.
It's been done.
I think it's been done so much that you kind of have to just kind of like, you can take it or leave it. I think it's avenge me son is one of those things that have been heard so many times that at this point it's just like a cliche regardless of which parent you're avenging. Bringing up the Nicki Minaj joke, I hope that there is like a bit more for the actresses to do, like in the film, with the understanding that obviously, it's going to be the bulk of the perspective is going to be Dev Patel's character. And it's his story. I'm just hoping that like there are some nice solid supports around.
Also, I'm hoping that there's more dark-skinned female characters, because the ones I've seen are pretty light-skinned, and it's the colorism of it all.
Oh, very much so. But yes, please, some agency. Agency for the female characters, please.
Yes!
Charlize Theron cannot hold, like Atlas, holding the weight of female-led action movies upon her shoulders alone. We need some more.
Pretty please. Okay, this comes out April 5th, so I guess we will see how this turns out then. Like I said, holy shit, there's a lot of news. I'm looking forward to The Public Domain and to Monkey Man and Good Omens Season 3. Who's got stuff to plug?
I did recently have a short story shared in a book, Tales from Fiddler's Green, which you can purchase right now from fiddlersgreenzine.com. Go ahead and support independent publications, and you can find me on Twitter at young Mr. Duffy, where I don't really tweet too often, but I do retweet a lot of cool art and leftist politics.
And you can find me on S for Karuna on Tumblr, where I post listicles and graphics. You can also follow us on the Niche Retelling Tumblr, and my GoFundMe is still up, so if you're able to donate, it would be greatly appreciated.
And as always, you can find me on Twitter, Tumblr, and TikTok at Faye Riviera. And consider following this show on Twitter at IAR Podcast while Twitter is still a thing. And if you want to help us reach the next chapter of our story, please consider donating to our Patreon or our Ko-Fi page. Or if you are unable to do so, please spread the word about this podcast. We are found wherever podcasts can be cast. Rate and review us, spread the word about us. We really appreciate any way you could help us. And coming up next, at last, I plan to release the Green Knight episode. This ended up being a big undertaking, way bigger than I expected. Better late than never, right? Thank you so much for listening, and this was Retelling the News.